Hey, deserving listeners. So I want to take a quick detour from watching Love is Blind Season 8. I want to go back to the beginning of the season and rewatch some of the key scenes between Alex and Madison. With Madison, we saw the way she broke up with Mason, and I had my reaction at the time, but I've heard other people saying it could have been other things that were happening, and so I want to rewatch that. But I also just want to rewatch the buildup of their relationship, because a lot of people have been accusing Madison and Alex, but particularly Madison, of trauma dumping. And I want to investigate that term, trauma dumping, because it's being used a lot, and I have spent a lot of time developing notes on trauma dumping and defining it, and also laying out what I believe to be the very problematic nature of the term in terms of the way it's being used. I think it's just repackaged stigma that has been around for decades. I also want to rewatch some of the scenes with Alex in light of the allegations that we have heard online about his past behavior. We can't know if the allegations are accurate or not, but I thought I would watch out for things that I might be able to comment on, because when I was watching it originally, I hadn't heard those allegations. So let's watch the show.
This looks amazing. The guys who brought out a deeper conversation with me were the ones I wanted to see again.
Yeah.
If the intellectual connection and the emotional intelligence is not there, I cannot be there with you physically.
And that's, I like.
Yes.
Just a little intro there. Right from the beginning, Madison knew and was picking her date partners based on having a deeper conversation. So that is in line with, I think, the trend of the conversations that she was having, particularly with Alex, that would lead to people saying that she was trauma dumping. So right from the beginning, she was knowledgeable about that.
I had really severe acne. I wore this big purple sweater every day because I just felt comfortable in it. I remember telling a girl that I had a crush on her in high school, and she laughed in my face, and all of her friends looked over at me and started laughing. And so then I went and ate lunch in the bathroom.
So who knows? I'm just going to say the following, which is that I have treated individuals in the past, and of course heard case studies and heard colleagues talking about cases in which an individual was engaged in what we would consider to be predatory behavior of younger people, minors, and they are mandated to therapy or some sort of treatment program. And some of these individuals I have treated, and I have a lot of colleagues that work with these people as well. It's not a specialty of mine, but it has happened occasionally for various different reasons. And sometimes these offenders would be minors themselves. They would be 15, maybe, or 10 even. So there's just a wide variety of folks that I'm thinking of right now. But the conceptualization as to why someone would do this is varied. There's a lot of potential factors, and we can never really know why someone would offend in this way. But we have our conceptualizations, because to understand why, one, it gives us an ability to focus our treatment with the offender so that we can reduce risk of offending in the future, and have a way of determining in one fashion how risky they are as time goes on. Because if they are still considered a high risk, then we want to recommend to the government that sanctions be continued so that they aren't allowed to just roam freely in society, that kind of thing. So that's one thing, but it also gives us something to focus on in terms of the treatment so we can help them to not have that need, right? And one of the conceptualizations, of which there are many, that experts and myself will hypothesize about, is that the offender is very insecure due to past experiences when it comes to engaging in peer-to-peer romantic or sexual relationships. And they are afraid in a pathological way to engage with people their own age because of their past experiences. They have needs, they have wants for both acceptance, love, affection, sexual contact, friendship, and they will find themselves feeling much more comfortable with much younger people, and they will find themselves extremely uncomfortable with people their own age. And there's various different configurations of this. It does not excuse it at all, by the way. If someone is of sound mind, then those individuals, regardless of their needs or their desires or their preferences or their traumas, they know better. They know that they should not be offending in that way. These notions are well understood in society. So it's possible that someone that presents like Alex, given what he just said, has that trauma and offended due to that. Now, it wouldn't be the only factor, right? Because there's plenty of people who've been bullied or ostracized or rejected or humiliated, and they would never offend in that way because there would be a barrier there. They would say, no, that even though I have an inclination to do that out of my own comfort level, it's not okay to do that. So I'm just going to have to figure something else out, or I'll just be lonely, I guess, right? So there's a lot of people that will do that. In fact, I would guess that most people would. But some people will have a flow chart of decision making that leads them down that path, or they are somewhat psychopathic, meaning they lack empathy, or they had something modeled to them, or they also had been victimized by an offender when they were younger in some way. Now, I want to be clear, I'm saying nothing about Alex because the allegations, although laid out fairly systematically by Ricky on TikTok, Ricky really did the work of journalism of really trying to confirm data independently, right? People were making claims about even knowing him, and so she would look into it to look for corroborating evidence, and it's hard to find that sort of stuff, but she found it, and she's reporting it. I tend to trust her, but we can't know, right? Because people can make mistakes, or there can be lies, there could be agendas. I don't think Ricky is lying, but the people talking with her could be lying. So we just don't know. So I'm not saying anything about Alex. And I'm not just saying that to avoid a lawsuit. I'm saying that because I genuinely just understand that when it comes to these kinds of allegations, when you look into the story, often there's a lot of details that are left out or confused or distorted or something. So, I just don't know. But I say all this because the way in which society tends to characterize or conceptualize someone who is accused of offending in the way that Alex has been accused, they have one way of conceptualizing these individuals that I would just call the evil conceptualization, or the purposeful, psychopathic, predator, sadistic personality individual, meaning that the person wakes up in the morning and says, ha ha ha, I want to harm other people, let's go. Those people exist, by the way. They are what a lot of people would consider to be evil or monstrous. And it's hard to know if we can reform those individuals. Certainly, there's been a lot of attempts. I've worked with some of these people for a long time, and I can tell you that a lot of attempts are made to get through to these individuals to modify their behavior, and they do not. And unfortunately, these individuals just have to be restricted regarding their freedom so that they don't harm other people, meaning that they have to be in some kind of detention, or they have to be watched heavily, like in a halfway house, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I'm not saying anything about Alex, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. In fact, some of you might be thinking about Michael Jackson when I talked about what I was talking about earlier. Again, we can't know anything along these lines, but the way in which the allegations and the nuances of the stories that are told about Michael Jackson, it's possible that the conceptualization or the cause of offending it fits this scenario with Michael Jackson. And because Michael Jackson was extremely abused growing up, and he had a very strange life because he was so famous and he was on the road and he was prevented from having a regular life since he was very, very young. And so you could see someone developing in a way that would make it really hard for them to feel comfortable and maybe even completely in a state of PTSD distress when they are around people their own age, and yet they have urges and desires and attachment needs, and they want best friends, and they want a partner, a companion, and they have other factors, of course, that can conspire to them offending, even though they're not, generally speaking, an evil presence in the world. They're not waking up in the morning, generally speaking, harming a bunch of people, and they don't actually have a developed attraction to far younger people than themselves. And if the trauma was addressed differently and effectively, even in the slightest, there's a chance, who knows, that these individuals would never have offended because they would have been comfortable with people their own age and would have met their needs that way. And another thing that I'll say is that when people have needs and they seemingly have one way of getting those needs met, and they're quiet about it and they don't have anyone to talk to about it, they'll justify it. They'll find ways of justifying it. And if, in the member video, I went over all the allegations about Alex, and it's possible that a good person, a person with empathy, a person who has a lot of positive qualities, but due to their trauma and due to maybe some personality leanings, they go down a path and they're at a crossroads where they're like, okay, either I continue getting my needs met and I figure out a way to justify all this to myself in this really denial, distorted manner, or I have to pull back and not get my needs met. And, and a lot of people, when they're isolated and they have no other options, will continue to go down that road and just justify it to themselves. They'll make up elaborate, strange stories about why it's all okay what they're doing. I'm not saying anything about Alex. I'm just saying this as a general education. Because, one, I just want people to know, but also it's important to understand this because when there is an offender in your life, or you're wondering about an offender in your life, a lot of people, believe me, will say, I was in denial about that person being an offender because they were such a good person. And the way the society talks about offenders and the way that I've been taught about offenders is that they're just evil monsters constantly trying to harm people. And this person that I know in my personal life, or a relative or something, or even if it's themselves, honestly, they'll say, that's not them. So we need to understand that offenders can offend from a lot of different places.
Ever to do. So I
That's
really
so
love
cool.
that you like to travel.
What are you looking for in a partner?
I just want someone who's kind.
It's really important to me that people feel safe with me.
Oh my gosh. You're saying all the right things, Madison.
I had a rough childhood.
I want to hear about that.
Okay, so this is a great opportunity to start talking about trauma dumping. What happened right there is an excellent example that we can analyze as to whether or not, at least in the beginning, this fits the criteria of trauma dumping. But since I'm not reacting to the show live, I thought that the series that I'm making right now will be for members of the YouTube channel. So if you want to see this mini deep dive on Alex and Madison and trauma dumping, then join the channel by clicking the join button below, becoming a member. When you become a member, you are really giving me the ability, you're paying my bills, literally. I don't get a lot of sponsorships. I try, but they don't really reach out to me for whatever reason. The only reason why I'm here doing this, and I have the time because I'm not working other jobs, is because people are patrons or members on YouTube. It is the primary way in which my family can pay our bills. And so there's that. Also, there's always a group of people that are canceling, and so we always need new people. Otherwise, things start to go downhill. So yeah, no guilt trip, only if you can afford it and only if you're interested in watching. We post a good number of member-exclusive videos, and there's member-exclusive YouTube lives and whatnot. So anyway, if you want to see the rest of this video, become a member. Otherwise, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.